Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. We welcome you, whatever time and wherever in the world you are listening. We are pleased you have found us. You are now listening to Inside the Bunghole, a podcast taking you on a journey through wine. Together, we will learn more about this wonderful elixir of life. So raise your glass to welcome your hosts and partners in wine, Pam and James. You are now Inside the Bunghole.
Well, everybody, it's a new season of Inside the Bunghole. Thank you for sticking around for what? This is for our fifth year?
I think so.
I think it's our fifth
And if we're wrong, we're wrong.
And if we're wrong, we're wrong.
Well, we're usually not wrong.
Yes. Maybe we're not wrong and you are. Who knows? So this is our first episode of 2025, our first official episode. And we are sitting here with Mr. Keenan of Keenan Wines in Napa Valley.
Napa Valley. Napa's in the house.
And multi-generational vineyard. Tell us a little bit about you.
Well, you touched on the word that really resonates for me, which is wrong, which is the theme of our it's the theme of our Christmas party, which is wrong, and really fucking wrong. So we finished the party with a male versus female joke-telling contest. So that's where the wrong comes in.
Oh, good.
So it gets lumpy.
It gets wrong cheap.
But actually, you can't go too far. We've actually disinvited one person because she was foul without being funny, and that's
called obnoxious.
yeah, that's a party.
Annoying. Because there's sometimes people that are just loud. They're not funny.
Right.
They're loud.
But she was disgusting
Disgusting.
without being funny.
Without being funny.
Well, so now
And you can't call her
I
up.
was gonna say I could probably.
Pam is kind of like that, but you could cover it up with alcohol most of the time. But this sounds like it's
No, there's plenty.
I'm sure there's plenty of alcohol involved.
Yeah. Well, back to me.
That's the
To reach over.
I am the second generation leader of the Robert Keenan Winery. My father was Robert. He bought the property 50 and a half years ago after being mentored into the fine wine space by his father-in-law back in the 50s. After 20 years of collecting these wines and enjoying them, he got the bug to become a producer in 1974. So he went up to Napa with not really any formal training, but with some knowledge of the history of wine.
And this is really before California wines were
Really
firing on all pistons.
Well, so think of this. I made this up, but
Good.
fortunately it turned out to be true. So in 1974, there wasn't a restaurant in St. Helena, which is our nearest town, that served dinner. And now 50 years later,
Oh my God! It's
Napa
a
is
food mecca.
it's a food mecca. That's 50 years is not that long a time frame.
No, I still have
So
time.
that's how much change has taken place in the Napa Valley from the day my father bought the property to now. But his goal was to be a first growth quality producer of Cabernet Sauvignon.
How did he get into wines to begin with?
Well, he married my mom in 1952 or 3 and happened to marry a young lady whose parents had a cellar full of the first growths from Bordeaux and the Grand Crus from Burgundy. Wow. And if I could roll back the clock, I would love to interview my grandfather and ask him, where did you learn about? Because, we're going back in time here.
Right.
So Dad got the bug from him, and then he passed it on to us. He wanted us to learn about wine at a younger age than he did because he felt like he was a little behind the curve when he married my mom and was kind of married into the country club set in Burlingame, Hillsborough, and he felt like everyone knew about wine but him, and he had to fast-pace himself to get out there and not look like a Irish rube.
He a native Californian?
Yeah, he was born second generation Keenan, born in San Francisco. His grandfather, my great-grandfather, came from Ireland in 1870-ish as a refugee from the troubles of the North.
I think being the fact that he didn't know and he kind of felt behind the 8 ball probably fast-tracked his ass.
Oh, yeah.
well, he was Irish, so he really liked alcohol.
Yes.
So
Yeah, but usually whiskey's their drug of choice.
And he was he went to Stanford 2 years before. He joined the Navy, and 2 years after, he double majored in European history and political science, the perfect background for the wine business.
Perfect.
Yeah. Psychology.
Yeah. So he went to Napa with this vision, and he only looked at mountain properties. And his instinct is what I call his Irish knack for dirt. He just knew where stuff should go, whether it was an orchard or housing complex or a shopping center. He was a real estate guy. He just had this instinct and some training, some, reading and whatnot and history. So in 1974, all that was really happening in the valley was Oakville and Rutherford. Like I said, Saley didn't even have a restaurant that served dinner. And he looked at only 2 sites, Howell Mountain and Spring Mountain, and he chose Spring Mountain, where we are, for 2 reasons. Number one, we're on the west side of the valley, so we face east, even though with the humps and bumps and the 180 acres that we own, we have almost every orientation on the compass, but we're primarily eastern facing. You catch the morning light, and then the afternoon when the sun's coming down at its harshest time, it's parallel with the ground and you get a nice break. Then the second tiebreaker is water. Spring Mountain's called Spring Mountain for a very good reason. There's a lot of water in the ground. So
You get a lot of fog action up there?
no, we're just east of the coastal fog, which can come sometimes all the way across Sonoma and stop at the ridge line of the Mayacamas Mountains. And then the valley fog comes up from San Pablo Bay and fills up to about 1,400 feet in elevation. And we're 1,700 to 2,000.
Okay.
So 2,000 is the top of the ridge line, right where we are. So we're in constant sunshine during the day, but with cooler temperatures because of elevation and fog proximity.
So how many acres did he buy? Did he purchase?
He bought 180.
Oh, wow.
So it's pretty rugged terrain. It had been a winery from 1890 to 1930 called the Conradi Winery. So we're one of the ghost wineries of the Napa Valley.
Wow.
Ghost wineries.
What does that mean?
It means they were a viable winery for a number of years and they went out of business during Prohibition. And then were fallow for decades. Property changes hands, new owner comes in and restores it.
And it was a winery back in 18...
I think they moved there about 1890.
Okay.
And then
It was California then.
Yeah, the cellar, the inscription over the cellar is 1904 when they built the actual stone cellar. Then we have photos of them, celebrating the hunt of 1913 and everything. And we knew they were from Northern Italy because the writing on the barrels was that hybrid German Italian language, whose name I always forget what it is, but you can see Jaeger, not Jägermeister, but it might have been something like that. It was the hunt, and that's a German word, so we knew they were from the far north. And they probably felt comfortable in the Mayacamas Mountains because it seemed like home.
Yes.
And
And that's the Bordeaux growing kind of
It is
weather.
now, but back in 1900, the dominant grape in Napa was Zinfandel.
Okay.
So here's a fun fact. We're the first people in the history of the world to grow Bordeaux varietals on our property.
In the world.
In the history of the world.
Really?
Yeah.
To grow Bordeaux grapes on that
On our property.
on
yeah.
your property.
Yeah. Again, think about that.
When
for
you're
a second.
thinking about it was back in the 1800s,
It was,
they were
well, you can go back and you can see Cabernet is planted in the valley, going back pretty far.
way back.
Yeah,
How
way-
far, how far back?
1870-ish, something like that.
The Indians, they weren't fucking around with grapes.
No, weren't. No. They were still trying to invent the wheel. I mean,
Here you go.
They didn't do the wheel.
no, they tried.
I noticed they pull a horse, but it's like a stretcher on the ground.
Well, they got close to the wheel with the things they would put the acorns in and mash. That was the second thing, but they never got it up here, never got it to roll.
Mexico had a wheel. They had donkey going around in a circle, bringing up water.
That's just because they made tequila.
They made tequila.
Otherwise, they wouldn't have been in business.
Yeah, there would have been a need for the wheel.
So do you have siblings that were with your family? Brothers?
It's just me for this generation.
But his son is now in the business.
Yeah, and the business generation 3 is active and
G3.
So your dad did very well. Good. And how, as it crossed over to you, how was his wine theory and your wine theory? Because you probably went to school at this point in time.
not for no. My formal education stopped with 12th grade.
Okay.
So I was done with school.
You knew you were going to be a winemaker.
Not at all.
Not at all. You
Not even close.
Were you a beatnik? What was your...
Yeah, when I left high school in 1976, I knew I was taking the next year off. I applied to college. I was a good student and everything. I got accepted everywhere and chose Vassar because there was,
A lot of girls.
a lot of girls. Yeah, thank you. But I took a year off, and with a friend, we traveled around the world. So we went east until we got home. And the focus of the trip was India. We had some unusual teachers in high school, and our goal was to find a guru in India and become enlightened. So we had high goals. Well, so during that trip, I became vegetarian and found a guru and was meditating, 2.5 hours a day and all this kind of stuff. And then I came home at the end of August 1977. Dad was getting ready for his first harvest. And I was looking for a job. I just want to get a job of any kind. And I'd started an ornithological program at my high school, studied birds.
Yep.
Couldn't find a job that paid in that field. So Dad said, "Why don't you come up to Napa for the harvest? I need some more help." And I said, "Sure," thinking it'd just be temporary. So I went up there, worked harvest, and left after the end of, I think right after Thanksgiving. I got a job from the contractor who was restoring the old building, and moved out to the coast where all his work was, and became a carpenter and then a general contractor for 20 some odd years.
Still no winemaking.
No. Well, I worked the first harvest. I learned from the winemaker. We went through the whole process, and
Right.
so I did learn about the nuts and bolts of winemaking from a real winemaker. But the most important thing was, and you kind of touched on it with your question, is how does my style different than my dad's style?
Yeah.
And I was being interviewed by a master sommelier a couple of years ago, and he asked me the same question. He goes, "You've been running it for about 25 years, your dad for 25 years. How's your style different than your dad's?" I said, "Stylistically, it's not different at all. I just think we're getting better at it." Because my dad gave me my wine values as a child.
Right.
So literally before high school, because mom and dad got divorced first year of high school, but he still would come down and have dinner with us because his cellar was still full of wine. And he was very didactic, wanted to make sure that, me and my sisters knew about wine at a young age. And it really worked. I mean, it was just second nature to me. So when I came back to the winery in 98, when my dad retired, to make a long story short, I inherited a very famous Napa Valley winemaker. And within a month and a half of working with him, I said, "No, this isn't working. I'm going to make all the decisions from now on."
Button heads, is that what it was?
No, it wasn't butting heads because I was the boss, so there was no problem with that. That he represented Napa wines, and I don't like Napa wines in general. I like French wines. That's what I was taught, was through the lens of French wines. And you can see it in our wines. And Robert Parker, the wine critic, who I got to know pretty well over the years, he said it best. He goes, Michael's wines combine the best of the old world, which is savoriness, sense of place, acidity, complexity, longevity, food responsiveness, with the best of the new world, which is a sense of delicious ripeness. I mean, we have an amazing climate in Napa, which is why Napa is such an amazing place. And the soil types and the valley to the top of the hills, you got all this incredible, true Mediterranean climate. You can make it any way you want. I think a lot of Napa wine guys follow the May West school of winemaking, which is if a little bit of ripeness is a good idea, a whole lot of ripeness is a better idea, which is wrong.
Right.
Restraint is key.
What does France lack as far as climate, soil, sun? Put it real quickly. And that makes your wine, your grapes, our grapes, 'cause I drink them too, but the sun gives just more of a ripeness, more of a juicier grape.
Yeah, this is why the French invented the concept of vintage, because there was such variation season to season because the weather was so unpredictable. I mean, Bordeaux is a maritime climate. It's really affected by the Atlantic Ocean. We're a Mediterranean climate where we really don't have rain during the growing season, almost ever. And they have all kinds of weather during the growing season, from shit happens in the spring, shit happens in the summer, shit happens during harvest, and you never know.
Wow.
So all the great vintages of Bordeaux going back, hundred years or so, are the years where it was sunnier.
Right.
So taking that little nugget of wisdom, was it you that you decided the Bordeaux, or your dad decided let's do the Bordeaux?
Dad did, yeah.
Dad did.
For sure. Because he knew
That's
Pinot Noir was unattainable.
And then the Napa style wines are definitely not opposite, but just a whole
They're
different.
riper. And as you ripen further in the equation, you obviously get more fruit, you get higher alcohol, and you lose savoriness, herbaceousness, and the sense of terroir. Those what I call the subtle subdominant components that make wine interesting, make varietals identifiable. Those get lost when you ripen further. Then it becomes quite common to add a lot of oak on it, because from the oak you can add spice back into the palate from the wood that you've taken out by over ripening, and that's the classic Napa style.
And they're still doing that today.
Oh yeah, sure.
Michael, can we talk a little bit about Mega Purple, since we hit on that note earlier in the day? Because a lot of Napa wines are, not a lot, but some of them are using it.
Well, yeah.
What is Mega?
You hit a break.
Okay, when we get back, we're going to talk about Mega Purple and what the hell it is, and we'll take a quick break and come right back.
If you want to know more about Inside the Bunghole, join us on all our social media platforms. You can get a revisit and view all the latest posts, giveaways, and information on this podcast. Simply search Inside the Bunghole on Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram. Like, share, and subscribe. Leave a comment. We would love to hear from you. Or you can email us at insidethebunghole@gmail.com. Thanks for tuning in, and visit our website at insidethebunghole.buzzsprout.com, where you can always find our latest podcast and past episodes. Cheers!
We're back. We're back. Thank you for hanging through there.
Armand had a very interesting question about
Armand was talking some smack about Mega Purple, which, quite frankly, I don't know what the hell you're talking about.
It's a grape juice concentrate product that's got a ton of sugar in it that's used to darken wine and add body to wines that aren't ripe enough.
And I call it the MSG of wine.
That's a great term for it. And if you use Mega Purple, you have to then treat the wine with another compound called Vilcorin, which is a toxic compound that kills all the living ingredients in Mega Purple that will prevent a secondary fermentation from happening once you bottle the wine. And you have to get a special license to use Vilcorin because it's a toxic chemical. And then you can't touch the wine for, I don't know if it's a month or there's some period. We never use this. I'm not exactly sure on the details. But if consumers knew that these products were in some of these very popular wines, they would never touch those wines.
And what? So
We
Are
can't
we
name
talking-
We can't name them.
Never.
are we talking about manufactured wine stuff? Some of the wines that you go to the store and buy because you know exactly what you're going to get every single time?
Yeah, that's sure.
Is that what?
That's exactly it. That's exactly it.
I mean, it's
wow.
this is not something that's just done with lower tier wines. This is something that's done.
Yeah. With
Yeah,
But-
and I was telling Armand that we have two sources of gossip at the winery. Our UPS driver, who gives us the gossip of who's doing who and who's whatever. And then the other source is the Hispanic grapevine.
Yep.
My cellar master is Hispanic, and almost every cellar is full of Hispanics. They have their own
oh yeah.
grapevine, so we hear what's going on in this cellar, that cellar, and we're sometimes quite shocked to hear.
Boy, that's interesting.
Now, where would one find out if there is a wine that they are
Man,
liking?
Yeah.
Well, for me, I could taste it. I can always taste it. I say I don't want this wine, but I don't know about you, Michael. Do you taste it sometimes in the wine or?
Well, I don't really have those wines, so
Yeah, but do you ever recognize Mega Purple in a wine?
probably, yeah.
Yeah, I think I do.
Huh.
I could be wrong, but in my mind,
Well,
Circling the wagon back, you left India, you're hanging with your dad, you're just chipping in for the harvest.
I'm imagining you with like long hair, like a hippie. Am I right?
Well, I cut it by then. I did have long hair when I left on the trip, but came back pretty much bald. Or not bald, but I had my whole entire head shaved in Thailand before I came home.
When that must have been a trip. When did you get hooked as far as that first harvest? When did you get hooked and said, you know what, I'm going to stick around. I want to be part of this. What was the moment for you?
Well, I guess it was, I stuck to my teetotaling ways for about 5 years and then slowly began to, drink again. And like I said, I'd already had established a love for wine as a kid, literally. So I started collecting wines on my own and was, tasting groups, all that kind of stuff. And then, Dad and I had quite the falling out in 1995 because of his second wife was trying to get rid of me and my sisters. But she, at one point, successfully did. But then she was tragically, prematurely recalled by Satan in 1997.
God. Well, I wish. Can you give me Satan's number? I need that number.
No one saw this coming because she was younger and healthier, and Dad was a smoker and a drinker. And it's shocking he outlived her for 8 years. And after she was gone, I was the only child on either side of the family steps or on my side that reached out to my dad to make sure he was okay. Because, I'd heard that, the actuarial numbers are pretty grim. When a couple of that age, when the wife predeceases the husband, it's a death sentence for the husband.
Yeah.
A year is pretty much what they got. And they were a classic example of that. And so I thought, well, he's been a dick. He literally gave me a letter on Christmas night saying, you're out of the family. I'll never talk to you again.
Wow.
Yeah, it's pretty bad.
Stepmothers are
Yeah,
a whole different
And it was
breed.
definitely her prodding.
They're puppet masters.
So I reached out to him, and we slowly.
Are we still out? Am I still out?
No, I wasn't really concerned about that. You know, I had my own thing going, and I just want to make sure he was okay. So literally after a year, you know, the bond began to
heal.
to reconnect. And I think it was summer of 1998. He goes, "Look, Michael, yeah, apparently now you're my only heir." And I'm like, "Really?" He goes, "Look, I have two businesses. Either you take them over, I'm going to sell them because I'm done. You know, I'm an old man and I got nothing. I got no fight left." And I went, "Sure, but can I have a day or two to think about this?" Because I had a partner and we were high-end remodeling. Our business was at its peak. And
This was at the general contractor.
yeah, 1997, 1998. And we've been together for a long time. And he was my best man at my wedding. We were very tight. And it was a big decision.
Yeah.
I said, "You know, can I have a day or two?" And he goes, "Sure." So I literally went up to the winery the next day where I had not been welcomed for a number of years because of her. And the moment I got out of the car, I looked around, I thought, this place is magical. I must keep this.
Yeah, this
I will take this on. So I went back to my dad and said, "Look, I'll take you up on your offer on one condition." And he goes, "What?" I go, "As long as you're out 100%, I will not work with you. I will not work for you. I've been used to being my own boss for a long time. And either I have full control or not." And he goes, "Fine, here's the keys." And he literally let go and he never set foot on the property again.
Really?
He lived in San Mateo where I grew up, which is about, you know, an hour and a half, 2 hours south of Napa. And he just totally let go. So
How long did it take for you to, how many harvests, how many different wines till you said, okay, I'm very proud of this product?
well, that's a great question. Well, I can think of another way to answer that is how long it took me to get really comfortable with harvest and the sequencing and not being filled with anxiety before harvest. That probably took a good 8 to 10 years. But I knew, and we also had to replan almost everything because of phylloxera. So Dad had sorted that before I came back and pretty much finished it right when I came back. So when those vines began to kick in 2001, I knew we were onto something, and I've been very proud of it since then. It's just a question of, I remember talking to my GM at our smaller Christmas party years ago, probably in 02 or 03, and I said, "You know, Matt, you and I know we're doing something pretty special here. How long is it going to take, you know, the public to figure this out?" Because when I first started showing the wines in California in probably 1999, we had a great distributor, the same company I'm with now, actually. I can't tell you how many veteran wine buyers wouldn't even talk to me. They were like, "Keenan, that's not good anymore." Because Dad had been kind of a hands-off owner the final 10 years of his tenure for a host of personal reasons. So the winery had a lot of turnover and it had kind of fallen out of favor. And people kind of thought, yeah, it's kind of fallen
It's
by.
there, it's Napa, it's history, but that's about all it's
So,
got.
what else you got? Was Keenan, I can't, my name, here's my card, you know? So I got, and I was just surprised by it. They wouldn't even taste the wines. They didn't even want to give me the time of day. And I remember my first trip to Texas was in spring of 01. And they didn't have the same attitude there. They were more like, "Hey, sit down, tell us your story." And I just thought, wow, these people are really welcoming. And I had no idea how big the wine industry was in Texas. Yeah, that was a revelation. But finally, we began to get traction and more respect in California. And that's where we're at now. We're obviously well regarded now.
About 20,000 cases you said a year?
12.
12?
Yeah, on average.
Well, we're going to take another break. When I come back, I want to talk about the mechanics, your barrels, what barrels do you use, and you go shopping for those. Are they the same barrels company that your dad, you know, want to get into maybe the mechanics of your winemaking right after this.
If you want to know more about Inside the Bunghole, join us on all our social media platforms. You can get a revisit and view all the latest posts, giveaways, and information on this podcast. Simply search Inside the Bunghole on Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram. Like, share, and subscribe. Leave a comment. We would love to hear from you. Or you can email us at insidethebunghole@gmail.com. Thanks for tuning in, and visit our website at insidethebunghole.buzzsprout.com, where you can always find our latest podcast and past episodes. Cheers!
Hey, we're back, man. What do you think of that?
Oh, we're back. I think, kind of hurt my neck, snapping.
Right before we left, I want to talk about just the mechanics of winemaking overall. So we're barrels. Are they French oak? Are they from Russia or
Mostly neutral.
neutral?
Yes, mostly. So that's the single easiest data point I can give you about our barrel program. And I use barrels like I use salt in cooking. Salt's important to use, but it should never be a primary identifiable element in whatever dish you're making. If you taste my mushroom soup and you go, oh, you've been using the Hawaiian pink sea salt, I see. That's so.
You made that you're over salting a little.
Yeah, just so you're not into like toasting and getting.
We spend a fair amount of time doing blind tastings, analyzing the different barrels that we use and experiment with every year. So we put some thought into it, but I think we've really kept the same core barrels for a long time now because they're really good. And we mix it up a little bit, but then we spend some time analyzing it every year and make some subtle adjustments. But the main thing is it's more neutral than new. And of the new, it's more French than American, probably 2-to-1 French to American.
So when it's neutral, does it make a difference what kind of barrel it is?
No,
No, it does not.
not really.
Now, if you were to describe your wines as one of your children,
Well, I wouldn't. Next question.
Bye.
Although I will tell you,
yeah, the personality.
probably neither of my children will ever hear this, but I've been asked, many times over the years, yeah, Mr. Keenan, what's your favorite wine that you make? And for years, I'd give them the heist one. Oh, yeah, they're like my children. I can't pick a favorite. And then one day I thought, if both my kids were at a earshot, and you asked me which one my favorite was, I'd tell you.
Yeah.
We're not supposed to, but I'm that kind of guy,
I was just saying that about my brother. If he wasn't my brother, I wouldn't hang out with him. Yeah.
And he probably will hear it.
There's 5.
You got backup.
Yeah.
So I thought I would take a scientific approach to answer the question, what's my favorite wine? So I went out to the recycling bin right before pickup one day to assess the data. And first realized, well, there's some data there. It's
There seems to be a little bit more favoritism towards this one.
going to take a little time. And then after sorting it out, my favorite varietal is Merlot. So,
Merlot.
yeah.
That's one of James's faves.
I like Merlot.
Merlot got a bad rap with Sideways, and it's now starting to finally get back into favor again.
Well, it's actually the most planted varietal in the world.
Well, because they use it to blend a lot, too.
Second. I thought
It's second or third. Yeah. It's up there. Yeah. It's easy to grow, and it's usually quite pleasant. It's a little bit like Pinot Noir, although not as picky as Pinot Noir, and that it really matters where you grow it. And I happen to think that Spring Mountain is one of the greatest places to grow Merlot, not only on the North Coast, but actually in the world.
And how was your note keeping? You ever refer to your dad's notes? Was he a note maker?
I have never seen his notes, and I read my notes occasionally, especially if I have to write about a wine that I made ago, and I try to look up my notes. But my handwriting is so bad, right?
You can't even read
As
your
I'm
own damn writing.
I know. I've done this a couple of times where I'm at the table, we're having a blending session, I'm making the notes, and 2 minutes later, I'm like, what the fuck is that word?
Right. I made it up.
Thank God I put numbers on them so I know which one's my favorite.
How about your labels? You sit down with an artist, or do you?
That's a great story. So, I mentioned my parents got divorced, I think either right before he bought the property or right after. And but he still came down and had dinner with us, once a month or so. And at one of these dinners, he says, I'm going to buy this property up in Napa and I'm going to start a winery. And my mom, who was a bit of an artist, she was an interior designer, she literally just drew on a napkin our label and handed it to him, and he used it.
Wow.
And our label today is done by my wife as an homage to my mom's original label.
Okay.
And I've had a few people tell me, old timers who, didn't really track the history of the winery, but remember the first label and then now see the current label, and they go, wow, your label has never changed. It's so cool. You stayed so classic. And that's such a compliment to my wife.
Right.
She wanted to capture the essence of the first label, but make it a little bit punchier in the reds. It's funny, the red is smaller now than my mom's label, and yet it's more recognizable because the red's just a darker red.
We actually we played golf this morning, and he drew it on the golf ball.
Yeah, it's a very simple design.
Is there an anniversary coming up or something to the winery that you're thinking about that you're going to be doing a special blend or something for?
Well, our 50th vintage will be the 2026 vintage. So I'll probably do so. I'll definitely do a separate special label for that.
2026.
Yeah.
But they every 10 years they make the tribute, which you guys blend 2 different years, right?
No, it's 1 year. So I'll tell you the story. So my dad passed away in November of 2006, right after harvest, or a few weeks after harvest was done, which I thought was very thoughtful of him.
Yes.
Then I realized that if he passed away before harvest, then the value of that harvest would have been put into the estate tranche for the tax man to take advantage of it. Anyway, a small minor point. So we grow 2 clones from Bordeaux, clone 15 and clone 337, and they were planted in 1998. And the 15 matured first. That was the core of our reserve Cabernet from 2003. And then it seems to alternate between 7 and 15. 7 is a Davis clone, 15 is a French clone. Though they tend to alternate years, which is the core of the reserve Cabernet blend. And the 337 took longer to come around. It was a little bit more rustic, had a rougher tannin to it, and kind of a demure fruit profile until 2006. So it made this amazing transformation. So the tribute is a 50-50 blend of the 2 Bordeaux clones we grow, 15 and 06 and 337 rather. And that wine would have been unimaginable before that year, before the 337 went through this transformation. And all of a sudden had this bright cherry personality, the tannins had smoothed out, and that the 06 vintage would have been the 9th leaf. So it took 9 years to really mature. And
this was the year that your dad died.
yeah.
Interesting.
So I made
Although it happened before your dad, the blossoming of this.
Yeah, well, 06, that harvest
Yeah.
was the first time that block showed that beautiful
interesting.
profile. And also, I was raised with the template of French wines. In France, they don't make 100% Cabernet wines. They almost always have Cab Franc in them, or Merlot, or Petit Verdot, or Malbec, or something else. There's almost never. In fact, I can't think of one that I know that's 100% Cabernet. That seems to be more of a Napa thing. So to make a wine that's 100% Cabernet and those 2 Bordeaux clones together was kind of a magical thing. So I decided to make it every 10 years as a really special wine. So I've made it twice now, 06 and 2016.
Very cool.
And I'll do it again for the 50th anniversary, which would be really appropriate, 2026.
Yeah.
And now, how does someone find your wine and get your wine and wine clubs and all that? Or
Well, internet, KeenanWinery.com is the easiest way. So, but
And how is your wine club pretty active?
oh yeah, it's our saving grace because
Especially like during COVID and
we gave a lot of special case deals to the wine club and they bought a lot of it. But as you guys know, the wine business is in a very difficult spot right now, nationally and globally. There's simply too much supply for the demand. Demand's decreasing and supply tends to
all
keep
those
increasing.
damn doctors saying that drinking's bad for you. What the hell's the matter with them?
That's a part of it. But you can list off 10 reasons.
You're gonna be bored if you don't drink wine.
Yeah.
Or boring.
But yeah, our wine club is the core of our business, our direct sales, so which is great. And our wine club members are very, very loyal. This is anecdotal evidence, but during the 08 downturn, we heard from a lot of our wine club members, we used to be a member of 5 clubs. We dropped them all except you. We'll never drop you.
Right.
So we hear that pretty.
and then
What do you think makes people so loyal to you?
The wines are very, very good and they're very well priced.
Very well priced. I heard that.
And once you start drinking our wines, it's like the scales lift from your eyes, and then you begin to realize that, oh, that's crap, that's
overpriced as you? That's that.
Because they don't mask their wines with the neutral oak. It is what it is. I mean, and there's no fixing. I mean, when you put French oak and you put mega purple, and all that stuff,
all that.
you're just covering up putting lipstick on a pig. But
Well, you can't, and I can't tell you how many winemakers have said you cannot make good wine with shitty grapes. You just can't.
That's true. I will not argue that point.
But you can mask. You can like.
You can make shitty wine from great grapes.
Yep. Yes, you can.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Yes. Well, it's been a pleasure. Did we not cover anything? I think how are your crew out there in the field and your harvesting crew?
Well, that's something I'm really proud of.
Yeah.
I'm glad you touched on that. My dad had a really hard time with people in general. He basically hated people. It's a bad way to put it. And his first winemaker, Joe Cafaro, made it to 5 years. And he never had an employee that lasted longer than 3 years after that. And I came back to the program in '98 and brought stability and brought the
family kind of.
yeah, the ethics that my partner and I in the construction business had established, in the early '80s, how we were going to run a company, treat people like family, healthcare, profit sharing, all this kind of stuff. So
See, and the grapes know that. They can hear that.
happy camp makes happy.
Yes.
I know. My GM's is on his 30th year with me, and he's lived on the property for 29 of those years, raised his family there. My cellar master since 2003. My taster manager since 1996, and they all live on the property as well. It was funny. Our current cellar master, when he first came on board, he was a cellar rat, and it took him 10 years to shed the tag. New guy.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
Well, that is awesome. That speaks volumes to, and you do taste love. You do taste
I think so.
dedication.
I think they're laughing a lot because he knows a lot of jokes.
A lot of dirty jokes. Yeah. Well, maybe off.
But they're funny.
Funny dirty is good.
Yeah.
Well, I think we're.
Thank you so much for sitting down with us and sharing your story.
Absolutely, my pleasure. Napa is in the house.
Yes.
Thank you so
And
much,
we'll
Michael.
next time, like we go up there a lot.
When we are.
When we're up in Napa, which we should be up there a lot more than we are.
We'll do another show.
Sure.
We'll knock on your door.
Yeah, bring your piece of rebar up to the wall.
The phony baloney microphone. Well, awesome.
Okay, Herman, thank you for bringing him to us.
No.
And
Thank you, Michael, for coming. I appreciate it.
I'm glad you guys had a beautiful day out golfing.
That was.
I guess we're one of the only places in the United States right now that you can go out golfing. Apparently, there's a
Big
big
snowstorm up.
winter storm happening everywhere else.
Not here.
Not here.
No. So once again, your wine club, to get to your website, what is that again?
KeenanWinery.com.
With the K.
Keenan.
Yeah, exactly.
Beautiful. All right.
All
thanks for
right.
being here,
Thank
buddy.
you for joining us.
My pleasure.
If you want to know more about Inside the Bunghole, join us on all our social media platforms. You can get a revisit and view all the latest posts, giveaways, and information on this podcast. Simply search Inside the Bunghole on Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram. Like, share, and subscribe. Leave a comment. We would love to hear from you. Or you can email us at insidethebunghole@gmail.com. Thanks for tuning in, and visit our website at insidethebunghole.buzzsprout.com, where you can always find our latest podcast and past episodes. Cheers!